Bushido, the way of the warrior and the soul of Japan. Close your eyes. Imagine a figure standing still. Early morning, mist rising from the ground. A courtyard of raked gravel and old stone. He stands with his eyes closed. His breathing is slow and even. His hands rest at his sides. He is not waiting for something to happen. He is already complete. This is the samurai. Not the samurai of movies and legend, though the legend carries truth. The real samurai. A man or woman who spent a lifetime not just learning how to fight, but learning how to live. Tonight, let me take you into the world of Bushido, the way of the warrior. A philosophy so deeply woven into Japanese culture that even today, more than a century after the last samurai walked the earth, its values shape the way Japan works, thinks, and rests.
Who were the samurai? The samurai emerged in Japan around the 10th century. In the early years, they were simply warriors, men hired by powerful landowners to protect their estates, skilled with a bow, trained on horseback, loyal to whoever paid them. But over the centuries, something changed. The warrior class grew in power, and as they grew, they began to ask a deeper question. Not just, how do we fight, but how do we live? What does it mean to be a person of honor? What do we owe to our Lord, to our family, to ourselves? How do we face death and still choose to act rightly? These questions gave birth to Bushido. By the time of the Great Edo period, the long era of peace that lasted from 1603 to 1868, the samurai were no longer primarily soldiers. Japan was at peace. They had become administrators, scholars, teachers, men of culture as much as men of arms. And Bushido evolved with them. It became less about the battlefield and more about character, less about defeating an enemy and more about mastering oneself. At its peak, there were approximately 2 million samurai in Japan, roughly 5% of the total population, a warrior class that shaped an entire civilization. The 7 virtues of Bushido. Bushido is built on 7 virtues, 7 principles that the samurai were expected to embody, not just in battle, but in every moment of every day. The first virtue is gi, righteousness. The samurai must do what is right, even when it is not easy, even when no one is watching, even when the right path costs something. Righteousness is not a feeling. It is a decision made again and again in the small moments as much as the large ones. The second virtue is yu, courage. Not the absence of fear. The samurai understood fear. They trained alongside it for years. Courage is acting rightly in spite of fear, stepping forward when everything in you says to step back, speaking truth when silence would be safer. The third virtue is jin, benevolence. A warrior without compassion is merely violent. Bushido demanded that the samurai hold power gently, that strength be used to protect, not to dominate, that the powerful show kindness to the vulnerable. The fourth virtue is rei, respect. The deep bow, the careful word, the attention given to every person, every interaction. Respect in Bushido is not just politeness. It is the recognition that every person carries a dignity that must not be ignored. The fifth virtue is makoto, honesty. The samurai's word was absolute. They did not need contracts or witnesses. If a samurai said he would do something, it was already done. To lie was considered a form of cowardice, a failure of character more serious than any physical defeat.
The sword, more than a weapon. The katana is the soul of the samurai. Not merely a weapon, a work of art, a spiritual object, an extension of the warrior's own character. A master swordsmith, a katana craftsman, spent weeks forging a single blade. The steel was folded and hammered thousands of times, layer upon layer, until the metal became something that no single type of steel could be on its own. Hard enough to hold an edge, flexible enough not to shatter. Before beginning his work, the swordsmith would purify himself. He would fast. He would pray. He approached the forge the way a monk approaches a temple, with reverence, with total attention. Because the sword was not just being made, it was being called into existence. A samurai who received a great sword would care for it with the same devotion a parent gives a child, cleaning it, oiling it, studying its reflection. The sword was never drawn casually. To draw the sword was to commit to an action with potentially irreversible consequences. And so the greatest samurai, it was said, were those who never needed to draw it at all. The ultimate warrior was not the most violent. He was the most prepared. So thoroughly prepared that conflict itself became unnecessary.
Zen and the warrior mind. Bushido and Zen Buddhism are deeply intertwined. The samurai found in Zen a philosophy that matched the demands of their life. Zen does not offer comfort. It does not promise heaven or explain the meaning of suffering. It offers something simpler and more difficult: presence. Total, absolute presence in the moment you are in. For a warrior, this was not just philosophy, it was survival. In the split second of battle, there is no time for hesitation, no time for fear, no time for thought about the past or the future. There is only now. The samurai trained in Zen meditation to achieve this state not just in battle, but in all things. While eating, just eating. While walking, just walking. While sitting with a cup of tea, just this tea, this cup, this moment. The Japanese tea ceremony, chado, was developed in part through the samurai's relationship with Zen, a ritual of absolute simplicity. One room, one fire, one bowl of tea, the outside world held at the door. Ichi-go, ichi-e. One time, one meeting. The understanding that this moment, this exact gathering of these people in this light on this day will never happen again. Treat it accordingly.
The samurai and death. The samurai lived with death in a way that most of us do not. They meditated on it daily. The Hagakure, one of the great texts of Bushido, written by the samurai Yamamoto Tsunetomo in the early 1700s, opens with a line that has never been forgotten. The way of the samurai is found in death. This sounds dark, but its meaning is the opposite of dark. By accepting that death is coming, inevitable, unpredictable, perhaps very close, the samurai was freed. Freed from the paralysis of fear. Freed from the desperate clinging to comfort and safety. Freed to act with full commitment in every moment, because every moment might be the last. This is not despair. This is the deepest possible appreciation of life. If today might be your last day, you do not waste it. You do not treat people carelessly.
You do not leave important things unsaid. You do not go through the motions. You show up, fully, for whatever is in front of you. The cherry blossom falls. The samurai falls. The moment passes. But while they are here, they are completely, brilliantly here.
The Women Warriors, Onna Bugeisha. History remembers the samurai as men, but the full truth is richer than that. Among the warrior class of feudal Japan, there were women who trained and fought alongside men. They were called Onna Bugeisha, female martial artists. They trained in weapons, particularly the naginata, a long pole with a curved blade, which allowed a smaller fighter to keep distance and use reach and speed rather than brute strength. They were expected to defend their homes when the men were away at war, and many of them did so with extraordinary courage. One of the most famous was Tomoe Gozen, a warrior of the late 12th century, described in historical records as a remarkably strong archer and swordswoman, a warrior worth 1,000. Another was Nakano Takeko, who fought in the Battle of Aizu in 1868, one of the final battles of the samurai era, leading a unit of female fighters against modernized government forces armed with rifles. These women carried the same code, the same honor, the same discipline, the same willingness to give everything for what they believed in. Bushido was never just for men. It was for anyone with the will to live by it.
Bushido lives today. The samurai spirit today. The last samurai lost their official status in 1876, when the Meiji government abolished the warrior class as Japan modernized and opened to the West. But Bushido did not disappear. It went underground, into the culture, into the character, into the way Japan does things. You see it in the craftsman who has spent 40 years perfecting a single skill, making knives or pottery or soba noodles, approaching his work each morning with the same focus and reverence a swordsmith brought to his forge. You see it in the surgeon. Bushido lives today. The samurai spirit today. The last samurai lost their official status in 1876, when the Meiji government abolished the warrior class as Japan modernized and opened to the West. But Bushido did not disappear. It went underground, into the culture, into the character, into the way Japan does things. You see it in the craftsman who has spent 40 years perfecting a single skill, making knives or pottery or soba noodles, approaching his work each morning with the same focus and reverence a swordsmith brought to his forge. You see it in the surgeon who arrives at the hospital an hour early to prepare, to center herself before making decisions that will affect another person's life. You see it in the athlete who trains past exhaustion, not to win, but because the training itself is the practice. Because mastery is never arrived at, it is only approached endlessly with humility. You see it in the way the Japanese bow. A deep bow is not submission, it is the acknowledgement that the person before you deserves your full respect, that you are lowering yourself not out of weakness, but out of genuine regard. Bushido is in the train that arrives on time, in the student who cleans the school, in the chef who will not serve a dish that does not meet his standard, in the employee who stays late not because he has to, but because the work is not finished, and leaving unfinished work behind feels wrong. The sword is gone, but the spirit that carried it is everywhere.
Somewhere in Japan right now, someone is practicing. A kendoka in a dojo, striking the same target for the 10,000th time. A chef slicing fish with the same knife he has used every morning for 20 years. A student sitting at a desk, writing the same character over and over until it is right. Not because they have to, because they have chosen something, a standard, a path, a way. The samurai understood that a life without commitment is a life without shape, that the discipline you choose is the life you build. You have chosen to be here tonight, to slow down, to listen, to give your body and mind the rest they deserve. That too is a kind of practice. The practice of letting go, of trusting that the day is done and that tomorrow will come whether you worry about it or not. The warrior rests, so that tomorrow he can rise again. So can you. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. May tomorrow be the greatest day of your life. Oyasumi nasai.